There may be no track action at the moment, but off track, it is on fleek. It's unbelievable. I know, I got to push it that way. Where's Vettel going? There we go. What is going on in the world of Formula One? Man, this is the pit box. It's a very good evening. Welcome and thanks for joining us right here on the Pit Box, joined by my good friend Gary Formato. We're in separate homes because we're not allowed to be near each other. How's the lockdown treating you, Gary?
Listen, it's been okay. I've got to say, it hasn't been too bad. I think as we worried like everybody else, there's been days where we panicked, but other days have been okay. But it's been great. But I'll tell you what, the one thing about this whole this week's regarding Formula One, it's been fantastic because I haven't enjoyed reading about what's been going on in F1 for such a long time, like I did this week, and it's just such massive news and exciting news for Formula One. And so it really, it's great to be sitting here talking to you about Formula One and not COVID-19. Like that's all you hear at the moment.
Thank goodness for that, Gary. I've got to tell you, but amazingly on Twitter today. I'm just going to go through it. It was Vettel, Bottas, Sainz, Ricciardo, and Mercedes were all trending because today it all sort of exploded. So let's have a look at what's going on at the moment. The first bit of news that came out, of course, Sebastian Vettel didn't manage to renew his contract with Ferrari. The big talk is that he asked for a 2-year contract. Money contract, and apparently John Elkann, the big boss, and of course the grandson of Gianni Agnelli, vetoed that and said no, it's not going to happen. And Vettel then decided, okay, well, Ferrari put out the press release, I'm out of here. Gary, were you surprised?
You know what, I think I was surprised, but having said that, just looking at where the world is and where we all are now during this situation we find ourselves in, it's not an call that you'd be surprised to hear. From a Formula One point of view, the relationship seemed good. There was definitely potential for a world championship, or to at least fight for a world championship. Yes, there were a couple of niggles last year between Leclerc and himself, but it seemed like he was in the team. So this was huge, to see him walk out, and especially at this time of the year. I know it's a very different season where things are happening differently. We haven't had a race yet, and yet we're having all these negotiations going on with regards to next year. So it's surprising nonetheless to see Ferrari make a call like this for Vettel this early and announce it this early on in the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I was trying to sit there and think about it. Winter testing wasn't that wasn't that long ago, but it feels like forever. And now all of a sudden we're looking at driver lineup, driver changes. I mean, usually Ferrari only do these things round about Monza, which is September.
Yeah.
We're in June, we're in May. And all of a sudden it's done and dusted, and Sebastian Vettel is out. And then, of course, the $1 million or the multi-million dollar question was, who's going to go in there to replace him? And I must say, there were a lot of people who just went out, Sainz versus Ricciardo. And Carlos Sainz got the nod. How surprised are you on that?
Well, and I was thinking about that today as well. And it's, it all depends on what Ricciardo had done with regards to his career for next year. And I think the timing of it was all critical. And I think there may be a few people, and Ricciardo being one of them, saying, gee, was only if this had happened last week, maybe life might have been slightly different for me. Who knows? It's just all happened so quickly that these are one of those things. It's when a top driver like this leaves a team, and in the way that he has just done it, it just throws the market into disarray, and that's what it's done. But having said that, it seems to have all come back pretty quickly with some very, very exciting sort of outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy at the moment. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, we'll go into the team structures in a short while. So Sebastian Vettel is leaving Ferrari. Carlos Sainz is going to Ferrari. Danny Ricciardo is going to McLaren. Okay, that's what we've got at this stage. So let's start off with Ferrari. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, two terrific young drivers. Gary, take nothing away from them, but I cannot remember I mean, that's what it's going to look like. I cannot remember Ferrari not going for a much more experienced number one and perhaps a protege as a number two. They're putting a tremendous amount of risk in having two young drivers there at the same time, as well as Gary being in Ferrari, the pressure, the Italian media. Oh man, this is a huge gamble in my opinion.
I think, you said it as well. Just the one thing that you can't discount is the pressure, as you said, from the Italian media. When you are a Ferrari driver, it's a huge thing in the country. We know, and around the world, there's so many Ferrari fans around the world, for that matter. And as you said, quite unusual to see what we're seeing here right now. Look, being Ferrari, you would have probably wanted another top line driver, one of the big sort of from the big five in the car, but it just wasn't to be. So when you really think about it, apart from Ricciardo, who else was there to put in that seat other than Sainz? For Sainz, it's a dream come true, no doubt. But I've got to say, I see the way I see it developing is that clearly got a number one driver in Charles Leclerc, which is nothing wrong with. I mean, he's quick, and you certainly hope he's going to keep on developing and improving as a driver. And if he does, he's going to be a world champion or at least a contender for sure. But I don't know, for Sainz's career, I get this distinct feeling that he's going to be the number two player in that team, and that's just my impression from the onset. Maybe I'm wrong, and we'll see what happens next year. But that's the impression I get. It's as I said, the whole thing. I think the reason why it's such big news is, as you quite rightly said, it's just different for Ferrari to choose this sort of route. Everybody wants to drive for Ferrari in their career. All the top drivers, it's something that everybody wants to do, and for them not to have one of the big boys in there, it's very unusual.
Yeah, and I think that is where a lot of discussion is going to go, and you've got to sometimes look at the past to understand the future, and you've got to go back to the days when Prost resigned was fired from Ferrari, and thereafterwards you had Alesi and Berger, and that sort of was hoping it was going to materialize. It didn't really work out. The car wasn't that fantastic, but thereafterwards it was Michael Schumacher. He turned everything around. Thereafterwards was Kimi Räikkönen. Granted, he wasn't a world champion at the time, but he had the potential of being a world champion. Then it was Alonso. Then it was Vettel, all proven world champions and guys who had gone out there on the track and gone out to win. So I think, that's where a lot of people, I'm certainly puzzled by it. You said something, and it just scares me already. I mean, I think Carlos Sainz is only 22, although he's got hair facial growth. He looks like about 35, and Leclerc's only 22. But this is what Mattia Binotto had to say about Carlos Sainz's signing today, Gary, and you hit the nail on the head. This is what he said. Sainz is a very nice, intelligent boy with a lot of team spirit. He is a hard worker, and having him alongside Charles will be useful. In these 5 seasons, he has done well, bringing the car almost always to the finishing line and giving us giving his team many points. Just from reading that, you've got to believe that he's already been told that, listen, you are going there to try and assist Charles Leclerc.
I couldn't agree more, and I think he should probably be on the phone to Rubens Barrichello or Felipe Massa and just ask them how to deal with the situation, because I think that's exactly what he's walking into. And if you listen to conversations from Rubens, Felipe post their Formula One careers, there were some hell of a frustrating times for those drivers in that team while they were teamed up with Michael Schumacher and Fernando Alonso. And as a driver at that level, you want to win. You want to win Grand Prix. You want to win championships if you possibly can. And in a strange way, it's difficult to say no to a Ferrari contract. You can understand it's hard to do, almost impossible to do. But to walk in there as a clear number two, I don't know if it's at this point in your career, if you haven't won races and championships yet, if it's what you want to do, because the likelihood of you getting to that point and winning a championship now is going to be very difficult.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. But you know what? I think it is also fantastic. The world has changed, Gary. You and I have been on the phone to each other over the last couple of weeks, just chatting as we do as mates. And the world has changed. And perhaps maybe, Ferrari are sitting and saying, we've done this for the last 25 years. And since 2008 we haven't had, or 2007 we haven't had the success that we need. Maybe we do need to clean out the closet. Maybe we do need to change the way that we structure things. So in a way I find it a hell of a gamble, but I also find it an incredibly courageous decision.
Yeah, and remember the budget caps as well are coming into play. So now you've got a budget cap of 140 or 100, whatever that ends up the number actually. Let's put it 150 million. To chuck a whole big chunk of it at your driver becomes quite difficult. So you've got to take that into consideration as well now. So balance all of that out between running the team, developing the cars, and everything else they do, and of course trying to pay the best driver you can get for the money you've got available to yourself now. And I think that's also what pressure on a driver like Vettel at this stage.
Yeah, very, very much so. Okay, so that is Carlos Sainz. I mean, wow, can you imagine the party they're having in Spain at the moment? I mean, his dad is a multi champion in all kinds of disciplines, and his son now going to be a Ferrari driver. I think it's magnificent. Leclerc and Sainz is going to be fabulous. Now, let's move on to the other news that came out today. This just excites me. I think it's going to be terrific. Danny Ricciardo jumped from Red Bull, got paid tons of money to go to Renault. This would be his second season if and when we go racing, and we'll discuss that a little bit later on. But now he's going to go and join Lando Norris at McLaren. You've got to believe off track, Gary, this is going to be the most fun pairing Formula One has seen, I think, since maybe Berger and Senna. Something like that. It's going to be hysterical.
Well, probably even better than Berger and Senna from the fun point of view. But I think it's a great move for Ricciardo. And I don't think he would have known the Ferrari deal was going to come up, and he would have assumed, like everybody else, Vettel was going to stay. And I think it was definitely a good move. Remember, they're going to go to the Mercedes-Benz engines next year. The car wasn't bad last year. We don't know what it was going to be this year yet. Even if we do see the car, I think a good deal. But I think it's just quite, for me, one of the things. It's not a major thing, but Ron Dennis, back in the days of Ron Dennis, you wouldn't think that you'd have two drivers like a Lando Norris and a Ricciardo in a McLaren. It's a very serious, very organised organisation. It's definitely taking on a different tone right now. And I think for McLaren, it's good. I think the car's going to be quick and a good team to beat. I think for Ricciardo, definitely better than Renault. The Renault thing just didn't work out.
Yeah, I think it's a great call for him. Also, they're going to be getting the Mercedes power. They've got Alexander Seidel, who's ex-Porsche, who's done an incredible job around there. Zach Brown seems to be really getting the right people involved in the McLaren organization. They're beginning to become the McLaren of old, which we really want to see in the world of Formula One. I think it could be an incredibly exciting pairing between the two of them. And now we will really see, Gary, how quick Danny Ricciardo really is, because Sainz had a bit of an edge on Norris. Norris is very new, but Norris on his day could also be incredible. So it'll be wonderful to see Ricciardo and Norris on the track as well.
Listen, I think and a great opportunity for Norris, because I think Ricciardo's worked with Red Bull, worked with some Vettel, worked with Verstappen, worked with some quick guys in that Red Bull team, with Adrian Newey. So his experience is going to be vast, and I think certainly a guy like Norris would be good to have a teammate like Ricciardo in the team. And I think for McLaren as well, to push them ahead with the kind of experience he has, it's almost it was a no-brainer deal for them, something that had to be done. So I'm quite excited about this, and I think just being the drivers that they are and the personalities that they are, I think it's going to bring about a whole new sort of fan base for McLaren as well. But they did go off the boil in that regard, in the Alonso Button era towards the end there. They did lose their way somewhat, but definitely a team that's on the way back up. And you couldn't ask for more than to be in McLaren. I mean, the facility, everything else that they've got there, it is still McLaren at the end of the day, which you've got to thank Ron Dennis for putting in place.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's going to be amazing. Now we get to the really crazy part about what's going to happen next. So we've got Leclerc and Sainz confirmed. Lando Norris, Danny Ricciardo confirmed. Now all of a sudden we've got Sebastian Vettel sitting over here, and we've got a seat at Renault. Ocon returns to Renault. He was going to partner Ricciardo. What does Renault do? And now we're going to throw in a couple of names, Gary. You've got Sebastian Vettel, you've got Valtteri Bottas, Okay, and I'm throwing that name in there. And you cannot discount it. You've also got Fernando Alonso. Okay. What's going to happen at Renault? How do you see it?
This, again, I think it depends on what Fernando Alonso's sort of requirements are regarding his salary. Again, these motor manufacturers will come out of a very, very hard time, and I just don't know if the old Alonso package is going to be something that they'd look at. However, he's been out of Formula One now for a while. He's tried his hand at a couple of things. At the end of the day, for a driver of his talent, to be going and running around in the desert and doing his things, which is all great if it's what you're doing, but you're a Formula One driver, and you can win Grand Prix. I think you want to be in Formula One. So I would love to see Alonso back. I've got to be honest. I think it's just about how much he's prepared to drive for. I think that's where it lies with me.
Now, the big question is, Renault is a major manufacturer. You know that they are going to improve, although with everything that's happened around this coronavirus, we don't know where everybody stands. Let's be honest. We honestly don't know the future of Formula One and the manufacturers. But let's talk as though things are relatively normal, Gary. Renault is still a team that you want to be in because it is a proper manufacturer, and if they do get it right, their history has proven that they are one of the best out there. Now you sit and think, okay, Sebastian Vettel, he wanted 2 years at Ferrari. Does he want to go to Renault and try and build a team? I don't know if he's got that motivation, but I'm not Sebastian Vettel. He might be feeling a little bit down. Then all of a sudden you look at somebody like Valtteri Bottas. Valtteri is very, very quick driver, but he just cannot match the likes of Lewis Hamilton. But he's learned so much at Mercedes, Gary, that surely he's got to be a contender to come in and lead a team like Renault, bring a lot of expertise, help them along the way, and also in a way, get Ocon back up to speed.
There's no doubt. You echo my thoughts in that regard, because yes, I think a diligent driver, one of the most professional drivers out there, and as you said, to work with the team at Mercedes-Benz in current day Formula One, and having actually beaten him on occasion, he will bring a lot of experience to the team. And yes, I think to try and get it to go forward. But there's so many other things that they've got to get right in the team as well. And those, unfortunately, we just don't know. We would love to have had a better idea this year so far as to how that car was going. But pre-season testing looked pretty standard for Renault as to where they are. But yes, he would be an asset for that team. And I don't think, I think he have an easier life in terms of dealing with Ocon. But again, you could look at if the opportunity is there for him to stay at Mercedes-Benz, he's going to win a couple of Grand Prix, which is maybe better than fighting for 6th or 7th throughout the season. But you don't know what these guys are thinking about. You don't know what money's on the table. It's very difficult to get it. We're just giving our sort of a view that we have. But if you were Albertool and Bottas was available with the current experience, he's got current experience with the Mercedes engines. You'd have to look at him very, very seriously. There's no two ways he wouldn't be good for the team.
Listen, I'm glad you brought up money, Gary, because I've also been thinking about this quite a lot. There's no ways that drivers are going to command, and I actually think it in all sports, whether you play football, NFL, Formula One, MotoGP, all of it, the money pot is going to shrink incredibly. Ferrari also sat there and went, instead of paying Sebastian Vettel 40 million a year, let's get Carlos Sainz, we'll pay him 7, and we got Leclerc at 9, that's 16 million. So we actually got a whole pot full of money. But the only drivers who could really command big money has got to be Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, and perhaps Vettel somewhere along the line. For the rest, even Alonso coming in, there's no ways that he would be able to command serious money. And everyone's going to have to take some kind of a pay cut. And I just wanted to bring that up on the money side of things. But looking at Valtteri Bottas, how long can Bottas sit there and perhaps hope that Lewis says, oh, okay, well, I'm going to retire now, and Valtteri, you take over the mantelpiece. And just as he thinks he does that, all of a sudden Mercedes signed someone like Max Verstappen. This, in my opinion, is an ideal opportunity for Bottas to become a team leader and go out and hopefully do something with Renault. And I really, really believe maybe that's what Bottas needs now at this stage of his career. Otherwise, he's just going to be a number 2 at Mercedes again. And when Lewis decides to go, they might just sit there and say, okay, Lewis and Valtteri, clean out the closet.
Yeah, look, they may well. And look, there's other things we've got to think about as well. How long are manufacturers going to stay in Formula One? There's all these things that I think we're going to start understanding that further as we go into the year. Whether we race or not, I think we're going to get an indication of what everybody's thinking of doing. I definitely think there's going to be changes there as well. And I think you've got to be pretty have your ear close to the ground in your organisation to understand what's going on. And if you've got the right information, maybe it may be a good time to jump ship and go somewhere else where the future's a little more secure for yourself. These guys are they're making money. This is their jobs, and they've got to look at it like that. So. It's not about the money anymore, but it's still about the money to a large degree, and also about the longevity of certain teams in Formula
One. Very, very much so. I mean, who knows what the future holds when it comes to the manufacturers. I mean, Gary, there is also a lot of talk, that Mercedes might just only become an engine supplier. So let's hypothetically say that Valtteri Bottas goes to Renault, which means now there's an opening at Mercedes-Benz to join Lewis Hamilton. Now, I know that it most probably would be the daftest move, but imagine just having Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton in the same team. I think it would be amazing. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'd love it.
You know what? I wish it would happen. And if I was Liberty Media right now, Ross Brawn and the rest of the team, I would be on the phone to Toto and trying to put this deal together. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. I mean, it would be fantastic. From Hamilton's point of view, we've been really kind of got a situation in Ferrari right now. We've just spoken about Hamilton wants to become one of the greatest ever. That's what he's after. He wants a 7th world title. He wants to be seen as the greatest Formula One driver. And it's always debatable, I know, over the different eras and so forth. But right in this day and age, he can be the greatest. If I was Hamilton, I would want Vettel in the team, because bring him into the team, and if you beat him, it's only going to cement you, and it's only going to be good for the Hamilton brand going forward in whatever you're doing in your life. For Liberty Media, it would be a dream come true. For Mercedes-Benz, it takes you back to an era of Sterling Moss and Juan Manuel Fangio, 2 of the greatest drivers in the same team, doing what they do best. It would be outstanding. And if you really think about it, Formula One, it's taken a bit of knock. Again, not talking about the situation now, but over the last couple of years, there's people that have come out and haven't been happy with the engines, and there's costs. It's been a difficult time for Formula One. This could give them a massive opportunity. It's huge. It would be like having an Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather fight every other weekend. It's huge. We all know what that did for them with the ratings, the money that's involved in all that, for the business of Formula One. Even if Mercedes couldn't pay Vettel what he wants to drive the team, if I was Liberty Media, I would chip in the rest and make sure that happened. So, I mean, this is to me probably the most exciting thing out there at this point in time. Yes, Ricciardo at McLaren's been great. Sainz at Ferrari, great. Who knows where they go? But that could be one of the best things that could have ever happened to Formula One. You've got your bases covered. So whether the Mercedes is a runaway car, you're going to have 2 drivers fighting for the championship, kind of Prost and Senna thing in McLaren back in 88, in 89, so in 90. It's great. If you've got other teams like Red Bull, Ferrari that are capable of fighting for a championship, you're going to have 4 or 5 cars fighting for a title. It's kind of a no-brainer deal if they can put it together. It's everybody wins, and probably one of the greatest things we would have seen in Formula One for a long time as far as driver lineups.
Gary, you got me so excited I had to take my jacket off. I promise you, I would wish that I couldn't agree with that sentence. I would wish that Mercedes do something like that. And you know what? Who knows? Maybe even Bernie Ecclestone's getting involved and sitting and saying, boys, I know this game. That is what you should do. And the great thing also about it, Gary, is a guy like Lewis Hamilton is not scared of anybody. He's always said it. I don't really care who my teammate is. Just bring him along. We'll go racing. And he's the first to sit there and say, if the guy's quicker than me, the guy's quicker than me. Nobody's been quicker than him. That's it.
Yeah.
He had a bit of a time with Button at one stage, and they were sort of on a par, and the car was here and there. But this would be outstanding for Formula One to see Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton in the same team. It might also be, Gary, you know, what does they say? Revenge is something when best cold, served when best cold. We're in a cold season of Formula One. This might also be a great time for Sebastian Vettel to say to Ferrari, well, you know what? You should have given me the deal because now I'm going to go to Mercedes.
Well, it may well be the case, but I mean, for me, even bigger than giving the finger to Ferrari would be just the actual the opportunity for every Formula One fan and motorsport fan to see undoubtedly two of the best. You'd have 10 world championships in one team. When in the history of Formula One has that ever?
No, I mean, extraordinary. And I mean, today also, there were all of the memes that came out of Carlos Sainz in his red overalls and Ricciardo in the McLaren overalls. And there were just thousands of pictures of Sebastian Vettel in a Mercedes overall as well. Gary, before we talk on to maybe that last spot at Mercedes, if they don't go with Vettel, because I think it could happen if Bottas goes to Renault. The one thing that just puzzles or worries me a little bit. Wonderful for Ferrari to go with Leclerc and Sainz. I think that is terrific. But is that a strong enough combination at this stage to take on the might and brilliance of Lewis Hamilton? The only person I could see on the grid for 2021, because Vettel is no longer there, to have a glimmer of hope of taking on Valtteri Bottas, in my opinion, is Max Verstappen.
I was going to say, if Leclerc's going to beat Hamilton, he's got to get through Verstappen first. That's the way I see it. And it's going to be a tough job for him. And look, there's no two ways about it. The youngsters are very quick in Formula One. It is working. I think you just got this added scenario of it being Ferrari, which is a little bit different to other teams, you've got to say. And that's where I think you're going to really the guys' ability to deal with all of that and put the team together and achieve the results. But listen, they know what they're doing. It's Ferrari in Formula One. They've got their drivers. Leclerc was quick last year. He did put Vettel under big pressure. Let's see what happens. I can't really say I have my view. I'm not over excited about it. I've got to be totally honest with you. I want to say like we talk about a Vettel Hamilton pairing at Mercedes-Benz. You get excited about it. It's something. You know, the pairing it's good. It's definitely something very, very good. I just don't know if it's a realistic championship contender off the bat in 2021.
Geez, I'm glad you said that, because otherwise I'd be just sitting and saying, oh, it's spilt milk and you're just too much of a Vettel fan. I think it's wonderful, and maybe that's the different approach, but I just do not see it the way that maybe Ferrari sees it at this stage. Let's go back to Mercedes, Gary. If Valtteri Bottas goes to Renault, it means there's a spot open. If Vettel decides he's not happy and he wants to retire, and I'll be desperately sad if we don't have a Sebastian Vettel on the grid, but you know what? It's his life and he's achieved so much, so I suppose maybe he's had enough. Who would you put in that seat to partner Lewis Hamilton?
Well, that's a tricky one now, and you've just done a deal and given your third driver Ocon to Renault, and you know it's a difficult one to answer. And I'm just sitting here right now. There's nobody that really springs to mind. That you could fill in that, put into that seat. I mean, you've got to go up against Lewis Hamilton in a team that he's really owned for the last couple of years. It's going to be a very, very difficult job for any youngster coming in there. Having said that, and just talking now, you're going to look at a guy like George Russell. If you remember back, I think it was last year or the year before last, when he tested the car after the Hungarian Grand Prix, landed up fastest on the day. I would take my chances with a youngster like that. So, well, if we're going to go the route now, if we're going to have a seat to fill, let's put a guy like Russell in the car.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think George Russell definitely deserves a shot. I mean, we've seen this kid in Formula 2, how incredibly good he was, and has unfortunately landed up in a Williams and has been right at the back all of the time. But put him in a testing situation and all of a sudden he's as quick as anybody. So it'd be wonderful also just for the young upstarts, Gary. I mean, imagine seeing George Russell versus Charles Leclerc versus Alexander Albon versus Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, and then of course all of them still trying to chase Lewis Hamilton. I think that's a great step forward for the future of Formula One.
It would be great and a great step forward for the future of Formula One, but I think Formula One, like every other business in the world right now, after this, needs to reestablish itself. It needs to be rebuilt to a degree. Yes, there's money around. It's going to pick up. It's going to recover. There's not big drama that maybe we see in some other places. But having said that, I don't know. Nothing excites me more than that Vettel Hamilton possibility we spoke about just now. It's just you can talk about the guys chasing, get excited about the guys chasing, all that. But put a 4 times world champion against a 6 times world champion in the same team. It's unbelievable, and I've got a feeling it's going to happen. I really do. I just believe that.
I hope so.
Business sense, I just believe if Vettel wants to do it, that is, I think that this deal could actually happen.
Oh, I tell you, I hope so as well. And Vettel's, I think, the key to this, because I think Toto Wolff is on the phone and saying, listen, we'll give you the seat. That's how much we're prepared to pay you. Come here, equal this, blah, blah, blah. Go for it. Lewis has been here forever. Lewis is his own brand. Don't let that worry you. Come here and race. And listen, they will take all of the television time. I mean, you've got Hamilton and Vettel in the same team. It will be incredible, man. Please make it happen.
Well, they've got to make it happen. And remember, it's also about a legacy for Toto Wolff. I don't believe Mercedes as a manufacturer is going to be in for the long haul. There's just too much talk going around at the moment, and you know how it is in Formula One. These rumors are not normally rumors. There's some truth in it somewhere along the line. You've got Toto Wolff that's got a shareholder now in Aston Martin. We know it's happening over at Racing Point. The car, we haven't seen it on track in a races yet, but the car is almost a copy of this year's Mercedes. There's a big relationship going on there, and you've got to read the signs. And I think nothing would be better for him than to be able to close it off and leave the legacy, Mercedes-Benz legacy in Formula One in a fashion like that, where you can basically bookend it from a Fangio Moss to a Vettel Hamilton. What could be better?
Yeah, I love that scenario as well. All right, so that's looking at the various drivers, where they're going to go, what they're going to do. We just have the big question mark: who's going to go to Renault? Will it be somebody from the outside? Will they? I don't think they're going to bring in the youngster Zhu, their test driver. I don't believe Renault can afford to go and have 2 very inexperienced drivers, not for a team like Renault. So let's wait and see. Hopefully things will materialize over the next couple of days and we'll have even more information to talk to you about. But now let's have a look at what's going to happen this year if we are going to go racing. Gary, earlier on this evening, I received this, there we go, on the screen, a potential Formula One calendar, back-to-back races in Austria. And then they would go the British Grand Prix or even Hockenheim, weirdly enough. Yep. British Grand Prix 2, Silverstone or Hockenheim again. Then Hungary, Spain, Spain all of a sudden in August. Belgium, Italy, Azerbaijan, Russia, China. Those are the first page. And then we've got Mexico, Brazil, Vietnam, Bahrain, number 2, Bahrain again, and Abu Dhabi. It's a very interesting dynamic that they've put together here, Gary, and I know behind the scenes the amount of work that is going on between Ross Brawn, Chase Carey, the medical staff, the promoters of Grand Prix, the circuit owners is unbelievable what they are actually trying to do. All things being equal, would you accept a calendar like that?
Listen, after what we've all been through this year, I think it would just be great to see the cars on the track. So as far as accepting a calendar like that, to see Formula One Grand Prix happening, whether they are devoid of spectators or not, we can sit down on a Sunday afternoon, have a few beers and enjoy a sport we love very much and get back to life as we know normal. You know what I mean? That's what we love and enjoy. So many millions of people around the world also love and enjoy Formula One. And so, yes, I think it's just one of the situations. Everybody's doing business differently now. It's about recovery. It's about getting yourselves back on track. And so, yes, the calendar is what it is for this year. And we'll see it get back to a more normal situation in 2021. But let's go racing, man. I mean, I don't even care where we go. Just let's track ourselves and avoid whatever we need to avoid, and get out there and get cars on the track.
I must say it will be quite weird for the driver specifically to go and perform a Formula One race where usually 120, 130,000 people waving flags, air horns going off. I mean, the electricity that happens at a Formula One Grand Prix is quite something. And for these guys, I mean, it's going to feel like an extended testing session for them, Gary. They, even if they're not happy about it, it looks that way, that for the foreseeable future, at least until August, more than likely the guys will go racing without any spectators, which will be rather peculiar.
It would be very, very strange. And I think also a big lesson for any sport for that matter. And the fact of the matter is that you need the fans to make the event, to make the sporting event work. And it just, yes, we accept that it's got to happen like that, and there's no problem with it happening like that right now. It just has to be done like that. But I think it'll give us a very good indication as to what things would be without spectators in the grandstands. And if you're any motorsport category, you want spectators in the grandstands. As you said, it's electric. It adds a lot to it. I've been involved in races where there's big crowds. It is what it's all about. So yes, it'll highlight the fact that even maybe for Formula One, look after your spectators. You know, you can never get blasé about these things. Make sure the show's good. Make sure you look after them. Make sure people are treated correctly. Because there's been times, let's be honest, and not now so much maybe today, but in the past, actually, you've been to a lot of Grand Prix as well. Sometimes you sort of wonder, you know, how the spectator in the grandstand is being treated. And I think, and he's key, and he or she's key to making the sport as great as it actually is. So let's see. It'll give us a very good indication of just how important they are.
Yeah, stunning point made there, Gary. I'm also a little bit concerned if Lewis Hamilton goes in his winning streak, which fans is he going to thank?
Exactly. And, and crowd surf. Who's going to crowd surf with nobody? So it's going to be a bit of a problem. But yes, it's look, I think that it's great to see everybody fighting so hard to get themselves back on track, particularly Formula One. I mean, they're going to be the leaders in certainly in the motorsport industry in getting a worldwide show back on the road. And really, if you think about it, Formula One being the size of the show that it is, yes, we've got Olympics that are being postponed to next year, etc., but this is really a good test case for everybody else because there's so much logistics, so much that goes into Formula One that if they can start adjusting themselves to cope with this crisis and work around and get the job done, I think it's going to give a lot of people a lot of good ideas. And, you know, just on that note, it's probably getting a little long in the tooth now, but Formula One coming to the party in terms of producing certain medical equipment for the pandemic, etc. Formula One's been great. So, I want to see them back on track doing what they do. And I've had my reservations about some Formula One, especially of late with regards to motors, etc. The cost of Formula One. But, Formula One's Formula One, and I can't wait to see it back on track.
Yeah, exactly. 70 years old from yesterday, and amazing. I've seen the pictures already of what Mercedes have done in terms of making ventilators. Today, Ferrari released within 5 days some magnificent contraption that they've also developed to assist the medical profession in this fight against the coronavirus, COVID-19. So extraordinary, and I know Red Bull are doing things as well. So Formula One's not just about, hey, listen, just pay us the big bucks and come and watch us. So wonderful to see that. Okay, Gary. Now one other thing is we're talking about, yes, let's go racing. Of course, there's the health issue. There's the social distancing. There is the wearing of masks, all of these things. Now, I've read some very, very interesting articles, Gary, what Formula One is doing, and it's too in-depth to put it here, but I'll post a link at the bottom of this video for people to go and actually look at the article. But Formula One are taking this massively seriously, just as anybody else in the world. But Formula One, as we know, Gary, goes all over the world. So they're taking even extra precautions of how they're going to travel. They're going to create these hubs around the teams as to, so if somebody does get infected, they know immediately where to go and trace and track these things. So, as you mentioned, Formula One could well be the model. Of course, they will make mistakes along the way, but could well be the model for the opening of world sport in the next few months.
Yeah, exactly. And because of the show that it is. I mean, we know that it's hundreds of people in each team got 20 teams going to Grand Prix every other weekend. It's not just 2 teams and the staff. It's 20 teams and the staff and a lot of staff and a lot of technical equipment and cars and everything else that goes with it. So it's going to be fascinating to see how they get it all right. You've got somebody like Ross Brawn sitting at the helm of the Formula One management. You couldn't ask for a smarter guy in that regard. And as sad as it's all been, it's going to be wonderful to see how Formula One tackles it. Also, the human spirit in just getting the job done and fighting this thing as it should be fought, and actually getting on with your life and finding ways to work around it instead of waiting for it to go away. So I'm right behind Formula One here, like, as I said, I can't wait to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. I can't wait either. All right, finally in the show this evening, and I found this fascinating. Autosport, who is sort of the Bible of the motor industry in England and the UK, decided to put together a poll, Gary, where everyone was sitting at home twiddling their thumbs, not doing anything, and trying to find news on Formula One. And they decided to put together a poll to figure out who has been or is the most influential person in the history of Formula One. And they had 4 different categories. I think we're going to ask Fritz to put up the sort of, there we go. So we had drivers, we had game changers, we had, information, and team bosses. And hopefully you can see that on your screen quite clearly. But they had all of these people, Gary, and eventually it was a polling booth, and you used to go in and say, okay, vote Niki Lauda versus Michael Schumacher. The pros for Niki, the pros for Michael, the against for Niki, the against for Michael. And eventually, Gary, it came down to Bernie Ecclestone versus Michael Schumacher.
Yeah.
I found that extraordinary.
You know what, you're looking at it, Sasha, Bernie built Formula One to the business that it was before it was taken over. It was a phenomenal rise. I mean, we all know the story. We haven't been involved in Formula One. It wasn't what it was today in terms of live TV and all this sort of stuff. He put all those deals together and bought TV rights and fought the war with FISA in those days, and Raceday and all that sort of stuff that was going on. He really led the charge. And built the sport to what it was, and understood the value also of what the sport had. And I think it was the big thing. Nobody understood the value of Formula One until Bernie got involved, and possibly by meeting the right people at the right time, started to understand the value of television in that era. We've I think sort of going past the TV era, although it's still here, but that was what it was all about back then. And then Michael Schumacher arrived in Formula One, and people that are close to me will know that I'm probably one of his biggest fans. I'm a Schumacher fan, I always was. But, you sort of felt that he took the professionalism of a driver to another level and did things that were just incredible in Formula One. And, maybe I'm speaking from a biased position, but, when you saw Michael Schumacher running away with Grand Prix and winning the way he did, yes, there were people that were not happy about it and what have you, but it was probably the best time that Ferrari ever had in terms of Formula One. If you look back at the tracks in those days, it was a sea of red. It was unbelievable just what Michael Schumacher brought to Ferrari, brought to Formula One as a whole. And no matter what walk of life you were from, you knew Michael Schumacher and you knew Ferrari. Around the world, no matter where you were in the world, everybody knew Michael Schumacher and Ferrari. You drove past in a Ferrari, people said, Michael Schumacher. It was just the association that was built. It was huge. And it hasn't been the same. You've got to say, for any Ferrari driver past Michael, and you've got to use the Ferrari as the benchmark, because it's one of the biggest brands in the world and so forth. But you haven't had the kind of following that Michael Schumacher had in regards to that. Raikkonen, Fernando Alonso, whoever it was. So I would have to agree with that poll. There it is. Keep fighting Michael. We don't know what's going on, but it's good to see the poll come out like it did, I think.
Yeah, I just want to echo those sentiments. I think, a lot of people just sit there and go, oh, well, it was Ferrari and they just dominated, they did everything. But you have to honestly have lived through that to have seen exactly what kind of an impact he, as a person, together with Ferrari, had in the world of Formula One, and how he changed the dynamics with just the way that he dealt with the press, the way that he dealt with his sponsors, the way that he dealt with fellow drivers, the way that he dealt with safety. He was 100% committed and completely involved in Formula One. What really, I suppose in a way, surprised me, the fact that he actually came out and beat Bernie Ecclestone in the poll, is that Autosport is very much a British publication, even though it does go all over the world. And the Brits have never, ever been overly partial to someone like Michael Schumacher. They've always respected him, but they haven't been the biggest fans of him. And for the fact that he's come out in a British poll as the most influential person, just shows, Gary, that when you actually analyze and you put a lot of things aside and sit and say, well, I'm not a Ferrari fan, or I'm not a Schumacher fan, or whatever. But if somebody asks you that serious question and you've been following the sport for a long time, you have to think very carefully and cleverly about your answer. And I was amazed that Michael came out ahead of Bernie Ecclestone, specifically from a British concern. And I think it just shows you that a lot of people out there may say certain things on social media, but deep down they do know a lot more of the truth as well.
For sure, there's no doubt.
Sure. Well, listen, Gary, I tell you, I can't wait. Let's find out what's happened with Renault over the next couple of weeks. I mean, who knows how long it's going to take, and you find out what's going to happen with Sebastian Vettel. Vettel Hamilton is what we want to see. Mr. Braun, Mr. Kerry, and even Bernie, please get involved. That's what we want to see, Gary.
Absolutely, make it happen. But I tell you what, it's going to be an interesting time for us. Formula One, all motorsport in general. It's going to be a very, very interesting time for all of us that are involved in the sport. And Formula One is always going to be the benchmark and the barometer. If they get things right, they start pumping again, other things are going to start happening. So let's see.
Yeah, and I tell you, I look forward to, maybe we must do another show next week and talk about other forms of motorsport, how you see them, dealing and going forward with the sort of lack of sponsors, lack of business. How is motorsport going to look in the next 6 months? So I think we must have another chat next week.
Cool. Look, I'm always here. Looking forward to it.
All right, my friend. There we go. Gary Formato joining me on the pit box as always. Just wonderful. Thanks so much. We haven't had a chance to go through any of your comments, but I will go through them during the course of this evening and reply to any questions that you have. But thanks very much for joining us. To Henk and Fritz, our production team, who made us look all fantastic from different parts of the country. Thanks for thanks for joining us on the show in the pit box. Until next time, take care. Ciao, ciao.
Follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at F1 Sacha.